Okay, so in the last video, we talked about the while loop and how we can use while in a condition-based environment to have tasks repeat themselves until a certain condition is no longer true. In this video, we're going to talk about another looping mechanism, but this one's not condition. This one is count controlled, and that one is the for. So FOR, okay? The idea here is we want something to happen for a predefined amount of time, okay? So let's take a simple example here. Now, I know we haven't talked about a couple things here, but that's okay. I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it my name, and I'm going to set equal to Paul Burkholder. I'm going to not put this in all my name is equal Paul Burkholder. Okay? So what I'm doing is I'm just creating a variable, and I'm setting equal to the string Paul Burkholder, my name. Okay? And what I want to do is I want to look at how I can do something for a certain amount of time. Now, the for statement in Python, it does differ a little bit from what you may have seen in like C or Pascal or something like that. Rather than always iterating over some kind of like arithmetic progression, which is typically what you did in Pascal, or giving the users the ability to define both the iteration and holding conditions like you did in C, Python's for statement says, you know what, we're going to iterate over the items in any sequence we want. So it could be a list, it could be a string, it could be all kinds of things in the order in which they appear in the sequence. Okay? So what does that mean? Well, let's do this for example. So my name, I've got there. So I'm going to do a for I in my name. All right? Now, let me explain what we're looking at here. So for I, that I is basically what we're going to call our iterator. That I is just a variable that is going to hold the value of each of the items in my list or in my string or whatever I'm using that I'm iterating through. Okay? And I'm simply going to print I. Okay? Now, nothing real flashy here. Again, we got to pay attention to our syntax. We got for. We got some kind of variable. That could be anything. A, B, C, D, E. It could be Bob, what have you. In, and then we're doing my name. This is that string. And they're going to print the values for I. So basically what happens is it's going to print whatever I is until it reaches the end of this string. So it should print P-A-U-L space B-U-R-K-H-O-L-D-E-R. So let's go ahead and run this. Obviously I gotta save it. So go back here to my Python folder, and I'm just going to call this symbol4.py. So save it. And when it runs, you can see P-A-U-L space B-U-R-K-H-O-L-D-E-R. So what happens is this iterates through every single one of these in here. Now we can do that with other things too. Okay? Let's say, for example, I have a list of words. So I'm going to create a list. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? We'll talk more about lists later, but I just want to show you if I have a list, it's going to iterate through those numbers. So I'm just going to add to my program here. For I in my list, we're going to print I. Whoops, lowercase I. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. So again, the syntax is for whatever my variable is in, and then in this case we're doing a list. Okay, is what we're going to do for here. And then we're just going to print whatever is in the list. So again, if I run this, two things should happen. It should go through the for that will put all the letters of my name, and then I'll go to the second for that iterates to that list 1 through 9. So save it again, and there we go. So you can see PAUL space BURKHOLDER, and there's 1 through 9. Okay, so this is what they mean by Python iterates over the items of these sequences in the order they appear, meaning P, A, then U, then L, and so on and so forth. And with my list, it's 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. If I reorder these numbers, it's going to print them out in the order in which it's received them. Okay? So that's a real simple thing we look at for. And that for loop will only happen for the amount of time that this count is happening. It knows that there are only 10, 15 characters in my name. So it does it over each one of those. Same way here. It runs through and does each iteration until it runs out, and then it's done. Okay? So it makes it nice when we go through. Now, sometimes, and you'll probably find this to be true pretty often, we're going to want to say, you know what? I'm not going to use a string or a list as my count. Okay? I want to do something, 5 times or 10 times or 100 times. I don't want to have to rely on coming up with a string of 100 letters or a list of 100 items. So what we can do is, I'm going to delete all this, we can use something called range. Okay? The range function. So what does the range function do? Well, the purpose of the range function is it allows me to generate arithmetic progressions. Okay? Basically what that means is it allows me to generate a sequence of numbers of an arbitrary length that allows me to come up with a way to count and control my loop. Okay? So for example, for I in range. Now, the range command or the range function itself requires one argument. Okay? It only requires one. And that's the key though, the word requires. So if I put in like 10, okay? And then I'm going to print I. Now, the thing about range we have to remember, okay? First off, range starts its count by default at 0, okay? Unless otherwise specified, range will always start at 0. And it will end at 1 less than the number shown here. Which means, in this case, it should print 0 through 9. Because by default it starts at 0, and then it counts all the way up to 1 before this number. Because technically this is the number of items, or the number of sequence items we're going to have. So in this case we're going to have 10 of them, which if you count them, 0 through 9 is 10. So let's run this. Go ahead and save this. And you see I got 0 through 9. So if I would change this to, let me get rid of this here. Change this to 100, for example. Okay, if I change it to 100, for example, and I run it, it's going to print numbers 0 through 99. And there we go. 99 is the last one. Okay? So using range is a really good way to come up with a sequence of numbers that we can iterate through to allow us to control how long this loop occurs. Now, with range, there are some different things that we can do with it, though. As I said, it only requires one value, one argument. But I can have up to 3, meaning I can specify my starting value. So let's say I want to start at 1. Okay? So I'm going to start at 1. I want to do it 100 times, and I want to do this in increments of 2. Okay? So this is my starting value. This is the number of items, so basically 100. And this is my incrementer. So go ahead and type this in, and before you run it, what do you think, what numbers will be displayed? Well, let's find out. So we're going to run this. Of course, I got to save it. And if you look, it's basically all odd numbers up to 99, right? And the reason they come back as odd is because we started on 1. Okay? Since we started on 1, scroll down a little bit here, or not. There we go. Since we started at 1, it increments by 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7, and so on and so forth. And it goes all the way to 99. Now, what if I change this slightly and make that a 0? What numbers are going to be in there? Let's find out. So let's run our module. And you get all even numbers up to 98. Now, why isn't 100 in there? Why isn't 100 in there? Because we should have 100, right? No, 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 no. We're iterating through. We're saying start at 0 and go up to 1 less than that number. So we go to 99. So if I want to include 100, I need to make this 101. Since they make that 101, notice the difference now. When I run my program, I now get my 100. Okay? So when we use range, you require only one value, and that is your sequence. That's how many items you want in your sequence. By choice, you can add a starting value and an incrementer if you want to. Now, not only can we count upwards, but we could also count backwards, meaning I could do something like this, 10, 0, minus 1. Okay? This means we're going to go from 10 to 0, and we're going to decrement by 1. So watch what happens. Notice I get 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're starting at 10, and we're ending at 1 less than this. Okay? This may be useful when you start looking at how we can do some different things later. If we do some sorting, or maybe you just want to create a program that counts down. But range is a very good tool to use when doing any kind of for loops. All right, so let's look at a pretty good example here. All right, so here's an example. What this example is, this one might hit a little close to home here for you guys. This program is designed to monitor my tuition increase. Okay? So at a college, the tuition for a full-time student is $8,000. Okay? So we have that defined here at the top. So there's my $8,000. We know that it has been announced that the tuition will be increased by 3% each year for the next 5 years. So here is our tuition increase that we account for. So we set our tuition equal to our starting amount because we know that for the first year it's going to be $8,000. So we want to make sure we have that. And then what we're going to do, we're going to print a little table out here. Now, this /t, I believe we talked about that earlier back when we talked about /n for new line. /t just does a tab, okay? It's just to kind of help make things look a little flashier, I guess. We're then going to say for year. Again, year is just a variable, okay? Year is just a variable. That could be I for all I care, all right? But we make it something meaningful. So we're doing for year in range of 5. Why did we choose 5? Well, the program says, write a program with a loop that displays the projected semester tuition amount for the next 5 years. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take our base tuition and we're going to add it to this over here. So we're taking whatever our tuition was times the increase. Okay, so we're taking our $8,000, multiplying that by our 0.3% or by our 3%, and then adding that to the total for the tuition. So we'll have, 8,000 and then whatever it is after that. So then we're going to print out the year. Let me get rid of some of this crap here. We're going to print out the year plus 1, because when we do year here, it's going to start at 0. We don't want to have year 0. So I want to say basically the first year and then the price, and the second year and the price, the third year and the price. But what we're doing here, like I said, we're incrementing over using range, and we're going to do it 5 times. And these tasks here are going to repeat 5 times. Okay? Go ahead and pause the video for a moment and you can type this up. All right, so let's go ahead and run this. So we're going to run the program. Okay. And here we go. So we know that right now tuition is $8,000, but over the next 5 years there's going to be a 3% increase. So you can see here how each year we've added those up. Now, we could make a real easy change. What would happen if they said, you know what, this is going to increase for the next 10 years? Well, we change the 5 to a 10. And we'll save it, rerun it. And now we know what our tuition is going to look like for the next 10 years. Again, we're going through evaluating this based on a for loop, and these tasks are going to occur for so long. Okay? So that's just one example of a for loop. Again, watch your syntax. For, you have your colon out here, and then make sure you do your tabs. Whatever is in, or spacing, whatever you want to occur inside this for loop must have spacing. Okay? Let's look at another example. This one here is one of my favorites. Basically what happens is we talk about getting paid in pennies. This is a pretty popular program too, but it's one of my favorites. It says to write a program that calculates the amount of money a person would earn over a period of time if their salary is 1 penny the first day, 2 pennies the second day, and continues to double each day. The program should ask the user for the number of days and then display a table showing what your salary would be for each day. Then show the total pay at the end of the period at the end. So the idea or the premise here is, you know what? Every day I work, you're going to pay me double in pennies. So first day it's 1 penny, the next day it's 2 pennies, 4 pennies, 8 pennies, 16, 32, 64, 128, and that's going to continue over a certain number of days. The idea is to find out how much money you make, because when you talk to people, it doesn't sound like a lot. Like, oh my God, I get a penny the first day and then double. Write this program up and take a look at it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and pause the video a minute. I'll give you a chance to type this in, and then we're going to talk about it. Okay, so I'm creating some variables out here. Basically, day pennies, that's just saying, I'm going to get a penny a day for now. The number of days, I'm declaring that variable because I want to enter that in, so I'm just initializing. And then do the same thing with my total. I'm just initializing what my total would be. So I'm going to prompt them for the number of days they worked. They're going to enter that in. We're going to convert it to an integer. And then they're going to print a table. So again, we use a /t to tab and just make this table look neat. And we're saying, okay, for day, again, day just makes sense. We're looking at each day in this iteration. It could be I if you wanted to. And we're doing 1 to number of days plus 1, okay? Because what I want to happen is I want to include that last day, okay? If I would do this and not put plus 1, if I said put in 30 days, I'd only calculate for 29 of them, okay? So I do the plus 1, that way I make sure I get that extra day. So if I put in 15, I get all 15. If I put 365, I get all 365 days, all right? So we're going to print the day, and we're going to do a tab, and we're going to print out what they made for that day. Now, why do we divide by 100? Because I want to see it in dollars, right? I don't want to worry about what's in pennies. I want to see it in dollars. Then we take our total. We're going to add it to our day pennies, and then we're going to double our day pennies. So every time we go through, we're going to increase it. So the first day it was 1 penny, then 2 pennies, then 4 pennies, and so on and so forth. It's going to keep incrementing that every time. And it's going to do this until I reach that maximum number of days, that number of days I want to stop at. Notice the indentations here. This is all inside the loop. And then once I'm done, it's going to print what my salary is. And again, I divide by 100 because, well, quite simply, I want to know what it looks like in dollars. Because if I see 1,000,000 pennies, what does that mean? I mean, I know what it means, but I want to display what it means. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to run it. Make sure you're saved. All right. So another number of days. So let's just say you worked 10 days. So here you go. So if you work 10 days and you get double pennies every day, at the end of those 10 days, we get $10.23. That doesn't sound like a lot, right? That amounts to about $1.02 a day. Doesn't sound like a lot. But let's open this up a little bit. Let's say you work 30 days. Okay? So you can see it goes through and shows you what you would work. So if somebody ever says, I'll pay you a penny a day and then double it, look at how much money you're going to make at the end of 30 days if somebody says, I'll pay you a penny a day and double it each day you work. It's remarkable. Let's add in a format here. No, I don't want a format in there. Okay, we can do this. Okay, we'll just leave it like this. So that's what we got here. We got what our salary would be. Okay, so as you go through and say, okay, well, what would happen if I worked 60 days? Okay, so again, it goes through and it's going to show you what you would make in those 60 days. So if you work just 2 months straight through and they give you a penny the first day and double it every day after that, yeah, I mean, most people can retire after you get to, the 30th day, let alone day 60. I mean, you look at the amount of money, just how much you made in that one day. That's quite a bit of money. Okay, this is why I said this is one of my favorite programs to demonstrate the for, because it puts in perspective some of the things that we don't really think too much about. Okay, so that is the for. Okay, so that's how we deal with count-controlled loops. Okay. The loop terminates once it reaches a certain count. It reaches a certain threshold, which is not like the while. The while is condition-based. As long as a condition is true, we continue to do something with a while. With a for, we count, 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 count. When we reach the end of our count, then we stop. And it is quite common to see using like a range to generate a sequence of numbers. And there's other things we can do, which we'll look at later with lists and strings, but this is just one that we can do to kind of help out. Okay? All right. Well, again, take a look at this and run through and practice. And if you have questions, feel free to contact me. If not, I bid you good morning, good afternoon, good evening.